started out with a half yard of fabric. I found that half yard perfectly covered the sides of Eggo the way that I wanted it to look, so depending on whether your dog is smaller or larger, you may need more or less fabric. I folded the fabric in half vertically, and about 2 inches from the top, I cut a semicircle that was half the size of her collar. Next, I measured from the bottom of her collar to the end of her butt for the length. She happens to be 16 inches, so I cut the fabric to that length. Then I unfolded and began drawing the logo with a Sharpie. You can buy a crayon costume in the colors blue or Tickle Me Pink, but what I liked about this DIY was that you could also come up with your own color like Bad Dog Blue or Good Dog Green, but I thought Tickle Me Pink would be really cute on Eggo, so I went with that classic. I filled in the logo using black puff paint and a spongy brush. What I like about the puff paint is that it comes in a bottle with a little tip so you can be really precise on those edges of your design when filling them in. I took that fabric that I cut off in the beginning to make the crayon tip hat. I folded a piece of paper into a cone shape that I wanted and then used that to wrap the fabric around to cut the same shape. I just hot glued the fabric to the paper, but I would suggest using cardstock instead of paper because it ended up being a little bit flimsier than I wanted, so just to have a little bit more structure. To finish the hat off, I took a strip of fabric and glued it around the edge. I glued in the edges to give a more put together finish. I just taped an elastic to the inside of the hat so that Eggo could wear it. I forgot to mention earlier, but you'll need 2 pieces of the same shape for the body. I recommend folding your initial fabric in half and then following my beginning instructions so you end up folding your fabric twice when you start. Then, I cut 2 straps that would attach around her stomach to keep the costume on. I cut off the top in a diagonal to make the crayon tip and then glued the outsides facing each other so that when I turned it back inside out, it would look like the seams were sealed. I didn't glue the straps until the end though so that I could pull them through and have them be finished on the inside. Lastly, I put Velcro on the end of each strap to attach them. For the strawberry costume, I followed the exact same instructions as the crayon, except that I cut the bottom in a heart shape. I made sure the tip was 16 inches from the edge of the circle and then shaped the strawberry up from there. I cut out little white teardrop shapes as seeds and larger teardrop shapes as leaves. I just hot glued everything to the front. Following my earlier instructions, I also glued the outsides to each other to seal the seams and added the 2 straps so that they could Velcro around her stomach. For the headband, I cut out 8 leaves and glued 4 down with the first one directly in front and the next one's 90 degrees from there. I glued the other 4 on top in between the original 4. Lastly, I rolled up a little tube and glued a top to it. I turned it inside out to seal the seams and glued it on top of the leaves. For the unicorn costume, I started by cutting out a triangle in the size of horn that I wanted. I made the bottom curved thinking it would make a difference, but it really doesn't matter. I glued the right sides together to seal the seams and turned it inside out. Then I stuffed it with cotton balls. I cut a little piece of cardboard for the bottom and glued the edges down onto it. I took a piece of silver string to make the horn more dimensional and wrapped it around, gluing the ends down. Lastly, I just attached a little elastic string so that I could put it on Eggo's head. To make this skirt, I decided that 6 inches was the right length for Eggo, so I cut 12-inch by 3-inch strips. I then tied each strip around an elastic in the middle so that each piece ended up being around 6 inches. In total, I ended up cutting about 5 yards of fabric, 2 white yards, and 3 colored yards. Following the same steps as the crayon, I traced Eggo's collar and cut the length to 16 inches. I made some diagonal cuts to make the shape of the cup. To give the plastic cup illusion, I added 1 large piece of clear vinyl to go over the front with roughly an inch or 2 of space over the edges. Next, I glued all 3 pieces together to seal the seams and turned it inside out. I made sure to leave an opening in the vinyl though so I could slip in the Starbucks logo that I just printed out on a piece of paper. Lastly, to finish the cup, I just rolled a piece of vinyl up to give the illusion of a cup brim. To make the headband, all I did was roll a piece of fleece into a tube and glue it to a headband. I thought the straw would look cuter at an angle, so that's why I didn't glue it straight up from the top. This last costume is pretty easy to make, but really time consuming. Obviously, I didn't get it quite perfect, but considering it's a no-sew, I think it's pretty good. To start out, I found a box that fit Ego perfectly and cut out 2 semicircles with one in the front and one in the back. Next, I drew the quilted pattern on every side of the box as well as an extra piece that would be the first flap. I cut a piece of faux leather to wrap 3 sides of the box, and then I just followed the lines I drew on the box with hot glue while stuffing each section with cotton balls. It's important to press down on each line to make it sharp since there won't be any stitching to hold it down. After I did all the sides of the purse, I cut some strips and glued them in half. I weaved them through the gold chain and then poked some wire through the faux leather and just attached the chain that way. Lastly, I just took some gold paper and cut the logo out of it. As always, more information is in the description below, like how much each costume costs, a list of supplies, and about how long it took me to make each one. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you so much for watching.